So what should be our vision as leaders? In 3 words, I summarize that as communities of service and dissent. And this is each of these 3 words I want to emphasize. I've thought quite a bit about it, and in fact, the message of much of what we heard today in the 2 talks before me, that we are a community of service and dissent. The first, we are a community that we are people who seek our value and our action through community. That our virtue comes in a community. That we learn to be virtuous, we learn to be successful, we learn to be prosperous within a community. And despite the fact that our modern culture, our social media, our habits of consumption, our suburban lifestyles all compel us to be islands that are just concerned with hoarding, that our deen tells us to break those idols and to seek our happiness in helping other people, in being part of the community. But we are also a community of dissent. That is, we are dealing with such great injustices at every different level. Within the United States, but across the world. And we are a global ummah. Let us not forget that. We are a global ummah. We are a global community. We are a community of Muslims, and there is not a part of the world where you do not have Muslims. And when Muslims suffer anywhere, all Muslims ought to suffer. And that suffering is a beautiful suffering. That suffering is something that makes us human, that gives us plenitude of life. Right? That gives us plenitude of life. That gives us fullness of life. So when you worry about Palestinians, people of Al-Quds, people of this blessed place that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has praised and given to us, the Muslim Ummah, as a sign of the special mission of the Ummah to humankind. When people of Al-Quds worry, and when they are thrown out of their homes, when they are when they are victims of this cultural genocide, and people all around the Ummah come together for them and define themselves through them. People in Kashmir, I'm from Pakistan, and I know that people of Kashmir, when we think about when they struggle with their own persecution, half a century long persecution at the hands of Indian Army that has become extreme now, they take they take strength through the struggle of Palestinians and vice versa. So now that the number of Muslims that are suffering around the world, the communities that are suffering around the world, as they're multiplying, we should see that as a networking of communities around the world, so that Muslims are becoming aware of each other, and Muslims are being tested, and we are being aware of each other's tests. That is a blessing. It's a difficult blessing, but it's a blessing we have. So we are a community, but we're also a community of blessing wherever we are, a community of service wherever we are. But we're also a community, to go back, the community of dissent, that we must also be a community that is not afraid to challenge structures of power, of injustice, of kufr, and structures that perpetrate hawa, consumption, and desire, and lust, and promiscuity, as a way to maximize profits, as a way to divide people and destroy communities so that they could build their own false gods on that. We are a community of dissent, and we do not have a ready friend, if you will, either in the left or the right, this or that. We are a community that must stand for principles. And I want to end with these 5 metaphors of what it means to be a community of service and dissent. We are a community um, that of the ark. We're a community of the spark. We're a community of dream. We're a community of win-win. And we're a community of not giving rat's ear. 5 things. I'm going to say them again. We're a community of the ark, of the spark, of the dream, of win-win, and of not giving rat's ear. Those are 5 things that to me define the community of dissent. Those are those 5 things that to me define leadership. First, the ark. And by that I mean Noah's ark. When Nuh alayhi salam was building his ark, nobody believed him. He looked like a madman who is planning for a flood that will never come. And he was spending his life doing things that others don't see. So the ark stands in our deen, the adyan of all the Abrahamic prophets, for planning, for thinking long term. We have to think, as the Imam said at the beginning of this program, that we have to think 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now and invest, make a long-term investment. Planning is not something that only investment firms do. Planning is not something that only corporations seeking profits do, or at least they ought not to be the only ones that are doing the planning. Planning is the sunnah of prophets. Planning is the sunnah of the second father, Abu al-Anbiya and Abu al-Bashar. Nuh alayhi salam, the second father of all human beings. And this was the planning, this was the lesson that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught us through Nuh alayhi salam. That you have faith and you plan. And you plan to pass on your faith. And you plan knowing that the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is true when others don't believe. The second, we're a community of spark. And what I mean by that is that anecdote, that moment in the life of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when they are digging the trench, when the enemy has surrounded Medina in the 5th year of Hijrah, and there is a rock that nobody can break, and they go to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet comes and he strikes at this rock 3 times, and each time a spark comes out, and when that spark comes out, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, I see the palace, or one of the great palaces, the palace of the Persians, the Kisra palace of Busra, which is on the Syrian border. And these 3 sparks came out, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw 3 palaces. And what that meant was that he saw that Muslims are going to possess and overcome these great powers. And the hypocrites, people who did not share that vision and did not share the faith, they said, one of us finds it hard to go to the bathroom right now, and look at him. He is dreaming about palaces of the Persians and the Romans. But that was, you see, that spark that came out of the rock, that it represents struggle. It represents the seerah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which was planning and effort and great struggle. A time when truly people were afraid to go to the bathroom, that they had nothing to eat sometimes other than leaves. Yet at that time he had the vision. But this vision was not, he wasn't sleeping when he envisioned. This dream was a dream of a man who was striking and breaking rocks. And we are a community of that spark. We're a community of passion and vision and struggle. But we are a community of dream, good dreams. You see, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is known to have loved good omens, good signs, and good dreams. In fact, he would encourage his companions to say their dreams after Fajr. Because good dreams, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them, good signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives all around us. But we are bogged down by negativity. Of all the things that the Arabs used to do in the past, before Islam, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited them. The kind of fa'al they used to have, whether to travel or not to travel, various kinds of astrology. The only thing the Prophet ﷺ continued to do and he loved to do was tafa'ul, or feeling optimistic, being hopeful. This was a sign and character of the Prophet ﷺ, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a matter of fact, shows us signs in everything, all the time. Everything is an ayah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a believer is never wrong whenever he or she feels hopeful, based on a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and good faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether you see a sign, a dream, or something else around the world, some interpretation of yours, but it makes you, gives you hope, that is tafa'ul, that is a good dream, and that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we are a community of positive action. Even when we see that, yes, there is an environmental apocalypse. We know that capitalism has conquered the world. We know that the worst of the people, the worst of the people conquered, if you will, have conquered the world. They seem to be calling shots. But we are a people of hope, and we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give victory. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the victory is for us. Finally, we are a community, the fourth one, we are a community of win-win, meaning that we do not think that by supporting one cause of our brothers and sisters in Palestine, we are going to damage the people in Kashmir, or that by upholding the rights of people in Kashmir, we are going to harm our brothers and sisters in inner cities in America. And finally, we're a people who don't give rat's ear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defines the Sahaba as لا يخافون لومة لائم, people who are not afraid of the criticism of those who criticize. People attack you. There is Islamophobia. There is bias in the media. But we are a people who have a different judge. And having that kind of grit is the necessary part of our leadership. So with that, I end my message of community, of service, and of dissent.